Okay, thank you, Joey. Good job, and welcome everybody to the work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, January 13th, 2026. Happy New Year. And we're going to call this meeting to order and call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton. Here. Alderman Caesar. Here. Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
Okay, everybody's here. Next item is citizen comments for items that aren't on the agenda. I do have a number of speaker cards, but all of them are on agenda items, so we'll move right into number one, which is compliance of Resolution 2025-100 to affirm compliance with federal Title VI regulations. Any questions about that one? Okay, item 2 is event permit for Franklin Pride Festival sponsored by Franklin Pride, Tennessee at the park at Harlansdale Farm on June the 6th. And we do have one speaker on that, and I'll call them after Monique or Lisa. Do y'all have?
This is the 6th year for this event at Harlansdale. It's the same as they've had in previous years. The only change is that they're moving the event space to closer to the barn, so they'll be in the barn event space. And they are renting the entire park, and Alderman Barnhill had questions about the cost for that, and I'll defer to Lisa Clayton on that one.
Good evening. So as you remember, last year we updated our fees. And so therefore then at the park at Harlansdale, when you have a full park closure, then the setup day is $2,000, and then the event day for a full park closure is $5,000. If you only do a partial closure on one side of the farm and the rest of the farm is open, such as the dog park would stay open, but you're closing the other side, we do have it as a partial of $1,000 for a setup, and an event day is $2,000. But for the full closure is $5,000 for the event day.
And $2,000 for the setup.
Yes, sir.
$7,000 for that.
$250 for the beer permit then, so $7,250 is what they pay in order to have that park closed off for 2 days.
Correct. One of the reasons we ended up doing that is you're closing a very large park to the community. Even though an event may be open to the community, it's not an event to where anyone could walk in at any time. So there has to be restrictions for that, so we believe there should be a fee for that.
So we do that for anybody that comes through that wants to rent the park. We close it off so nobody can go in. Let's say pilgrimage, for instance.
Yeah.
No one can go into the park while they're doing their setup, and we're obviously doing the event, but certainly doing the setup then.
That is correct.
Any other questions from the board? If not, I'll ask Charlie Powell to come forward. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you all very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in Franklin. I'm a new resident as of 2025, and y'all have welcomed me with open arms. And I've been very blessed to be here. I come from the wonderful state of Georgia, so give you regards from Georgia as well. But I do come to address the Franklin Pride Parade. I had this sort of elaborate speech beforehand of things I wanted to say about the morality of such an event or how it works within our Christianity, maintaining the old school feel of Franklin through these types of events if possible. But then I thought, y'all have heard all of that. You've heard all of that before. And so, as a young man who's representing many other young men, young Christian conservative men, I only ask this of you. Just have courage. Just have courage. That's all we ask for. I'm not looking for any more excuses on the legality, First Amendment, we might get sued, all of that type of stuff. And I don't mean to be facetious and disrespectful. I'm sorry if I come across that in any way. But we are just looking for magistrates with courage. As a lone citizen, there's nothing I can do about this. We depend on those who we've elected to take a stand, to do the things that we want, that we ask for. If this continues, this problem is just going to come on to our generation to deal with. So again, the only thing I ask is to have courage, have real, true courage. Thank you all very much for having me. God bless y'all.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Alderman Berger.
Sure. Mr. Powell, thank you for your comments. This has not been an easy subject for me either. But as an elected official who has to abide by local, state, and federal laws, I don't necessarily have to agree, and I do not agree, with certain things that people believe, do, say, or activities, organizations, you name it. And it's not an easy thing for me. In fact, I got a letter, and I'll share that with you. I got a letter a while back, a number of years back, from the Franklin Gay Pride. And it's very interesting. A number of people got up to the podium and said, as Christians, we stand against this festival, and they had their say. And then I felt, people got their say. I ended up getting some very visceral comments from people that call themselves Christians. And I found it disconcerting. I found it sad in some ways. But I also understood it as a Christian, as a believer. I understand that. And but I think sometimes it's the way people say things. So in this particular thing that we're voting on, I don't have to necessarily agree, no matter what the organization is, no matter what the group is that's renting our public spaces, as long as they abide by our local, state, federal laws, as long as they don't conduct themselves in a way that's indecent and harmful, something that's unsafe. There's a lot of different thresholds that they have to meet. We do have rules and regulations for our parks. We've tightened some of those up. We've especially tightened them up for a lot of groups that use Harlansdale, even Pilgrimage as well. So I'm never worried about getting sued. I don't care. That never enters my mind when I'm casting a vote. Because if it's right, it's right, it's wrong, it's wrong. But if it's also, as an elected official, I take an oath to abide by all local, federal, and state laws. It's in my oath. And people have a right to use our public spaces even if I do not agree with them. But they also have to make sure that they obey our rules. We also have decency rules. We have rules for our festivals downtown. People just can't behave in a way or do things in a way that's super improper in a public space. And so we've worked with this group, and our mayor has worked with this group. And even I have concerns with the mission of this group. I'm required to abide by the rule of law. And when all those other rules and regulations are met, and year after year we observe and we evaluate Franklin Gay Pride, Pilgrimage, of all the different downtown festivals, we evaluate all those to make sure that there's something wrong. We make sure that's corrected. If it's wrong, if they go against our rules and regulations and laws, they're out. So we make sure that we watch that. And I cannot allow my personal beliefs, my personal convictions as a Christian in what I believe, and I'm going to say this is, I have an obligation to obey Scripture, but I also have, when something is under the law, in the law of our land, I'm I'm obligated to uphold that law. And that's why I support their use of our parks. I support Pilgrimage's use of our parks. But you can bet, if something goes awry, if rules and regulations are broken, decency laws are broken, those things, I will always vote no. And I just want to make sure that people understood where I'm coming from. And it's just not a very easy vote for me either. But it's the right vote according and under the law and under my oath. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
What, I have a question. There's also other costs along with Alderman Barnhill's, because there's police.
There are police, park staff.
This was something when we were campaigning and running for election that came up a lot, that this is like a city-sponsored thing, and this is a city-sponsored event. And I think I'm saying this simply for some more educational purposes, now's the time to do it, is that this is no more a city-sponsored event than like Pumpkin Fest is a city-sponsored event. Maybe we sponsor actually Pumpkin
We do sponsor Pumpkin Fest, yeah. It's a little more different, it's a little different.
Someone give me another one. We don't sponsor.
Well, Pilgrimage, right.
Pilgrimage is a great example.
Right.
Thank you. All right. Main Street Festival.
Yeah.
But even though we approve.
We sponsor Main Street too.
We do.
All the Heritage Foundation ones, we have a relationship.
All right, well, that's even better. We sponsor that. But that isn't some sort of like moral or qualitative statement that we believe in pumpkins or we believe in, that is, it literally is, this is an administrative function. We don't get to decide constitutional, the courts get to do that. And they did that in Murfreesboro. And Mr. Powell, who has moved here from Georgia, I would encourage you to look at that case 3 years ago when this really did tear our community apart. And there was some of us up here that voted against this. And for legal reasons, that kind of thing that we were to see, and it didn't happen, or it passed, and then Murfreesboro did deny it. And there were serious repercussions. So we don't live in that kind of world of uncertainty anymore because we've seen how that played out. But regardless of all of that, this is an administrative task that is literally here so that we protect public safety with people who want to use public spaces, so that we make sure that we don't overbook our parks and overbook our facilities. That is actually the task at hand. And so putting on to the alderman some sort of like ability to act as like judge or Supreme Court justice or preacher or whatever else outside of that, as much as like we have, like you said, some of those feelings, some of us have feelings in various ways. In this particular decision, that really isn't, the courts have told us, like that's not what we're deciding. We're actually deciding the use of a park and who can use it, and when they can use it, and how many police officers they need, and they got to pay for it. So, be a little more vocal about that this time, because it is frustrating that there's just a lack of education, that the people think that this is some sort of endorsement or some sort of it's not. This is literally, we do this for birthday parties that happen in parks facilities. We do this for, all the things. So let's don't make this something it isn't. This is not the John Roberts Supreme Court up here that gets to decide what is and isn't free speech. We are beholden by, as you said, the laws, that the courts and what they've said. And so, and literally we're just deciding on who gets to use the park and when, and then they have to pay for it, and they have to pay for the police, and if they put ruts in the park, they got to fix the ruts.
Correct.
Just like Pilgrimage. There's no, so that's more of an educational thing for the public, because I know there will be some watching. That this is not kind of what I do think it has been framed. And look, good people can misunderstand that concept, and that's okay. That's fine. That's why we get paid the big bucks to sit up here and make these decisions. But it is important to know what this decision is and what it isn't, and then to attack people's character, as not anyone here tonight, but as Alderman Berger referenced, that's not what we're doing. Not something we want to be a part of. Attacking character on any front involved in this kind of decision. So I appreciate those that have come and reached out. We did get some comments on this, but I just wanted to share those comments because it's important. Sometimes this kind of just happens like most special events do.
Right.
Because it's just kind of a procedural. But it's important to maybe not just to take some time to do some education, because if not, then kind of it gets written on its own. Thank you.
Alderman Barnhill.
I just want to make sure that I understand the fees, and if it was, that there's these fees are the same for any organization or any group that comes in out there, whether it's pilgrimage, whether it's the Friends of Franklin Parks or whatever doing an event, that the fees are the same. The rental is, unless pilgrimage does it 2 days. So they would be doing 5,000 Saturday and 5,000 on Sunday and whatever
more
it took
days than
to
that.
set it up.
They have a much longer setup.
They-
Pilgrimage is a much
yes.
larger.
Okay, well, okay.
Much larger event, but if it's a private event, the fees are set by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and therefore enforced
So,
for that event.
so if it took 3 or 4, well, what I'm saying is, if it took 3 or 4 days to set up, it's 2,000 times the 3, plus the 5 for the Saturday, plus the 5 for the Sunday then. That's, all I'm trying to do is to make sure that I understand that if anybody goes out there and rents that park, 200 acres, and says, this is our event, there, every person, every organization is paying the same, and we're not making any concessions to any one particular organization. Also, do we require the number of policemen based upon some magical number, or are the event is allowed to pick the number of?
No, our police department reviews the application, and based on previous years, they decide what number. Then we also have, like Pilgrimage does this as well, they have their own private security.
Okay.
They'll supplement the number of our officers that we have.
All right,
Mr. Mayor, one final comment, because I know we're going to move on.
You done, Alderman Barnhill?
I'm done, yeah.
All right, go ahead, Alderman Byrd.
I was making a point, I think I went down another trail when I was talking about some communications that I received, and I just wanted to actually say this because I think I did not say it, but I remember getting some very surprising comments from people who were standing up here against us allowing Gay Pride to use the park. So I understood that. But at the same time, after our vote, people were very judgmental in that way. And as you said, this is an administrative task, very much so. But I wanted to say, Gay Pride, one of the gentlemen who was head of that, wrote a letter to me. And I saved that letter. It meant a lot to me, even though we disagree on whether you call it lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, whatever we disagreed on. He sent me a letter, and I wanted to say this out loud and publicly, that he said, I know, Alderman Berger, that was a very difficult vote for you, considering your position, my personal position. And I thought, wow, he took a moment to write to me, even though we disagree, and even though we're at opposite ends of that issue. I really respected that. And I had a couple other people who also, on the other end, from a faith perspective, say that they were thankful that at least I spoke up and I gave my reasons. But then there were some other ones that were not so nice. So I think we all can learn a lesson in our society today that, you know, we're here to do a job. We're here to make sure the rule of law is kept. So I just wanted to make sure I said that because I think I forgot to. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3, which is event permit for Boots and Buckles Ball, sponsored by Franklin Noon Rotary at Bicentennial Park on March 28, 2026.
It's a first-time event honoring the 75th anniversary of the rodeo. It's kind of a ticketed event, and it's going to be held at Bicentennial, as you said.
Are they? Mayor,
Alderman Baggett, Vice Mayor.
what are they paying for bicentennial?
I don't have those fees in front of me, but they're
Whatever the
paying
fee
for
is you've
everything.
approved is
Yeah.
what they're paying.
Yeah, I know. I think it is important that everyone's paying.
Yep.
And I think
Everybody
some
pays.
of the Rotarians are here.
It's going to be great. 75th anniversary Rotary, our rodeo. Although I'm a Rotarian, my vote here is purely administrative and not in support of
You're not
any
benefiting
type of-
personally.
But you have tickets available on.
There are
site.
tickets. 75 years. It's a big deal. Thank you.
Are they using the whole park?
Whole park.
They are using the whole park.
Okay, item 4,
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, Alderman Caesar.
An administrative accolade to throw out here. I know that when we first opened Bicentennial, we were trying to figure out how to deal with events in that space. And tonight at the beer board earlier, the organization, the Rotary Group came up and was very clear and very intentional about where their alcohol was going to be. And it seems that we've gotten a lot better at figuring out how we're going to entertain in that space, and wanted to acknowledge the work that staff has done and in concert with those who are hosting events there to make it safer and more transparent for the applicant as well as those in administrative functions like on the beer board. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we'll keep moving along. Item 4 is ordinance 2025-51, an ordinance to rezone 16.81 acres from general office district to regional commerce district, RC4 district, for the property located south of Liberty Pike, east of Carruthers Parkway, located at 1211, 1217 Liberty Pike. Established a public hearing on February 10th, 2026. So good to see you, Chelsea.
Good to see you. Yes, these
Good
properties.
to be seen. As always,
Well,
Barnhill often
that's what
says.
Emily Huffer always says when we are the historic planner. It's good to be seen, but I'm not as quick on my feet as she is. These properties are 2 separate lots, both of which are currently vacant. These properties were specifically zoned to general office district many years ago to implement a transition from intensive commercial uses along I-65 corridor to adjacent single-family residential uses. Envision Franklin places both of these lots within the regional commerce design concept, but Envision Franklin height map recommends a maximum height of 3 stories for the property at 2017 Liberty Pike to help transition away from the Liberty Pike and Carruthers Parkway intersection to the residential area to the south. This request would not meet the recommendations of Envision Franklin for this property. And so before I proceed, I'll just show you real quick. This, where my mouse is 1217. It's the one we were just talking about. It does not currently meet the recommendations of Envision Franklin for the height to rezone it to RC4. Envision Franklin allows for 6 stories in height for 1211 Liberty Pike, assuming all the zoning requirements can be met. Envision Franklin could support the rezoning of 1211 Liberty Pike due to the guidance of the height map. The request for rezoning is only partially meeting the intent of Envision Franklin. Therefore, staff, as well as the Planning Commission by a vote of 9-0, recommend to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to disapprove Ordinance 2025-51.
Any questions or comments, Alderman Berger?
Yeah. Hi, Chelsea. Hi. Yeah, this is in my ward, and, this probably is going to get developed, but I totally agree with the vote that was taken. These 2 properties have been put together. The one on the west side, is that 111? Yeah. That could have a higher height, but the other one is transitioning down. This is also on the south side of Liberty. What's on the north side of Liberty is higher, but this is transitioning down. So I couldn't support the 4 stories or the allowable 4 stories. I don't even want 3 there. I don't want anything higher than Vui's, a restaurant on the corner. I think all that transition needs to stay the same or less, 1 or 2 stories. And then we have Breckenridge right behind it. Is it Breckenridge? Is it Breck?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
I said something wrong. Yeah, it's Breckenridge. That's right. And so I'm a little concerned about those residents there. So whatever gets built there, we have to have a big buffer, no matter what gets built there. But I can't support the height on that one. And the other thing is, no matter what goes here now or in the future, we have, I think there's a stub out into the bank area to the west. Whatever goes here, we have to have a road connecting that. So all those commercial areas from here to Carruthers are connected internally. We've got to have that. I think that's in our ordinances. I think that's in our documents.
Connectivity is in our
It
ordinance,
is,
yes.
but I want to make sure that happens. So I want planning to pay attention to that. I spoke to Amy about that earlier, and that's really important. And then whatever does go here, the ingress egress has to be right and left there because we had to eliminate it down here with the median. due to it being widened, the road widened, and then it's too close to the intersection, so we really had to keep that median there. So when people come out of that commercial now, they can't take a left. It's tough. So anyway, that has to happen for ingress, egress, for east and west on Liberty Pike, for whatever gets built there. I just want to go on record to say that. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, item 5, ordinance 2025-50, an ordinance to rezone 7.01 acres from estate residential district to office residential district for the property located south of Long Lane and west of Carruthers Road, located 4325 Long Lane, established a public hearing on February 24th, 2026. Joey?
Thank you. This is a fairly straightforward rezoning request from estate residential to office residential. It is the intent of the applicant to utilize the existing house on the property as administrative offices for the nearby refuge center. So it does measure 7.01 acres. It is within the regional commerce design concept in Envision Franklin, which does support both office and institutional uses. As a reminder, for office residential zoning district, the only permitted building type is house. So even if this were to be sold off and a different company moving in, they want to tear down the building, the new building would have to resemble a house. Any other use or any other residential on the property would have to then go through another rezoning process and go back before you for any future other kind of development. So staff does recommend approval as the Planning Commission.
Alderman Caesar.
Thank you, Mayor. My only concern is going from estate residential to office, you've got perhaps more traffic. And Long Lane is currently in a position where there's a lot of traffic there, vehicular traffic, and I worry about adding additional and making this transition in zoning and how that would contribute. Is part of this property, if it were to be developed, would it also come with the traffic study?
So as of now, they've not indicated they're going to do any sort of expansion on the existing house. So they're just limited to the square footage of what's there. And then should they come in with a site plan later, depending on the magnitude of what they would like to do, our engineering department may require a traffic impact study. But again, they're just wanting to use this as offices for the refuge center. So not a lot of additional traffic, more than likely for this particular case.
Okay, thank you.
I think we should also remind ourselves this is office residential, not just office. So it makes a bit of a difference too.
Yes.
Okay, I do have, Mr. Gamble, did you want to make any comments?
Yes, hi, my name is Greg Gamble, and I'm representing the applicant, the owner of the property, Mr. Keith Baker, and this property does not have sewer today. It has a septic tank, and it has a septic tank sized for a 5,000 square foot house. The use as office actually would be less intense than what a house would generate, no dishwashers and showers and things like that. So it can stay on the septic tank, convert to an office. It would allow Mr. Baker to rent this house out to a small business as opposed to a residential use. So, yeah, happy to answer any questions, but appreciate the time tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Okay.
His intent is to rent for office, Greg, his intent is to rent for office to refuge center, is that correct?
It could be the refuge center. They have a lease agreement that they would need to work out first. But if it's not refuge center, they would still like to have the option to rent it out as an office or professional use as
But
opposed
I think
to
they're
residential.
working with them, aren't they? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Item 6, which is Resolution 2025-93, a resolution amending the Madison and Franklin PUD subdivision, extending the vesting rights for the property located north of Del Rio Pike, east of Brink Place, located at 801 Del Rio Pike, established public hearing February 10th.
Yes, thank you. The applicant is requesting a 3-year extension of their vesting rights for the Madison and Franklin PUD subdivision. Just kind of a recap, because this has been several years ago now. This is an existing apartment complex off of Del Rio Pike, and they've come in, or a plan was approved that would tear down one of the buildings at the back of the property and construct 3 new buildings for a total of 64 additional units for a total overall of 254 units. And there were two modifications of standards that were approved that had to do with buffers and landscape along those buffers. A previous 3-year extension was granted by the board, mayor, and aldermen in July of 2022. That would extend it out to where they are now. So they are requesting another extension just for financing and to start work on the property. Should this vesting expire, they would have to go through an entirely new process of rezoning and a new PUD. Generally, the plan would or does comply with current regulations. There are a couple of limitations, though, mainly with frontage regulations, because they are not fronting onto internal drives like we regulate now, as well as if a new plan was to come back through, our staff would recommend a full connection to Brink Place. Previously or currently, only an emergency access gate was approved for that connection to Brink Place. So happy to answer any questions.
On the next map, I mean,
Go ahead, Alderman Peterson.
I was going to say, we might look on the next map, on our, can you bring that up? And you can see where it would hit Brink Place. The plan, yeah, on the plan, yeah.
Which one? One more down.
Down there, the development.
Yes, right there. And if you see up there where it would,
It's oriented, so north is on the right side, so I can highlight on the mouse here. So that's Brink Place, right up here.
exactly.
So again, it was approved with a emergency access only gate. And if a new plan was to come back through, staff would recommend a full connection there.
So what would be required to have a new plan come through that recommends connection to Brink Place?
Only if this plan was to expire, with the vesting period expire, and they would want to continue with a plan or similar plan, then they would have to come through the rezoning and the development plan process, start at planning commission for a recommendation, and then come back to you all for an approval.
At the initial, when all this was being approved, what was staff's recommendation as far as connection to Brink Place?
Our recommendation was for a full access.
Alderman Bland.
You kind of took the words out of my mouth, but you did it much slyer than I intended to. I advocated for emergency access only because I grew up on this side of town, and so I just wanted to draw, basically, that was staff recommendation when we forwarded it earlier. So there's not going to be any news. We knew what that was, but I hate that they've not been able to push this forward any sooner, but sometimes the world's hard, so get it.
So staff recommendation.
It's the same today as it was back then.
Exactly. Well, no.
Yep.
Staff's recommendation was to connect to Brink Place.
Exactly.
The staff's recommendation was a full connection
Full
to Brink
connection,
Place.
not what you described as being an emergency access or
No. What I'm saying, understood. What I'm saying is the staff's recommendation is the same back then as what he's saying it will be if they lose their vesting rights.
But they're not going to lose their vesting rights if we give it 3 years here.
that's right.
But they hadn't voted on
That's your
it.
decision.
Well, it's, you know how it is.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes you can speculate on how the board, what the feelings are.
Moving on.
Vice Mayor.
So am I correct? This was approved in March 2020. So this is going to take it out to 9 years.
Let's see.
The 9
Well,
years.
it's 7 years.
Well, I mean, that's today, but they're asking for 36 more months.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was yes, you're correct. I thought it was 2022. Yes, 2020.
So I think, I don't really, I mean, we've debated, we've not extended vesting. I mean, I agree with you on the not connecting. So just hear me say that. But also, when people ask, well, how the heck are there, units that are approved, not yet built, and that kind of thing, like it's because, this is one example of 64 of those units that are approved, not yet built, just kind of hanging out there for 9 years. I feel like there's probably a follow-up warranted discussion back to that vesting, kind of our philosophy on that, and because in the past we've just kind of said, okay, 3 more years, but we've had different discussions, so don't know that I would change anything on this. It's not a huge change, but it is surprising a bit that it's 9 years. And I bet we were surprised when we went from, 6 to what?
It was during COVID.
Well, COVID when it started.
Yeah, that put everybody out.
But I still think that 9 years, I think this is really more for how long is too long. I think that's a question that I don't have an answer to either. I'm good with this one though.
Well,
Alderman Berger?
so from 2020 to 24, everything was sort of topsy-turvy until people were getting back on track. And then we have some financing issues out there in the finance world, so that makes it even tougher. So I get this, but if we approve this, they have to start, don't they have to start within 2 years?
It would be a 3-year extension.
3-year extension.
So it'd be until 29.
So they have to break ground for 3 years? Is that it?
But that's their maximum time to break
Yeah,
ground on the
okay,
property.
all right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, item 7, progress report on resolution 2025-12, resolution adopting plan of services for annexation 4356 South Brother Road for the city of Franklin. Established public hearing for February 10th, 2026.
I'm so sorry. That's me. Thank you. This is just a quick progress report for 4356 South Carruthers Road. This property was annexed in May 27th, 2025. At this time, the city has fulfilled any and all of its obligations as outlined in the resolution. There will be no other reports given for this plan of service after the public hearing that's being established for February 10th, 2026.
Okay. Thank you. Item 8, City of Franklin contract 2026-0005 with the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation for an asset management plan in the amount of $250,000.
Hi there. So this is a grant that we applied for with TDEC to kind of update our asset management system that allows us to take care of all of the vertical assets that we have. So the kind of flip part of this is that it was discovered that during recently, after we had already been received all of our ARPA grants, that this is now a requirement to receive some of those final funds of the ARPA grants is to have an asset management plan in place. So this is, we learned that and then we applied for this grant in hopes of kind of bolstering up the system that we have. So this is the grant contract and it's on the voting tonight because we've obviously got to get that signed and back to TDEC. So happy to answer any questions. I know it's a quick turnaround.
Item 9.
Like the shoes.
Oh, I thank you.
I think we'll go to item 9.
Item 9, please.
I can't see the shoes, but I'm not sure I want to see
You'll
the
have that
shoes.
opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice. Item 9 is Amendment 6, City of Franklin Contract Number 2020-0012 with Hazen and Sawyer for the evaluation of the city's of Franklin's southeastern wastewater capacity. Wow, that's a mouthful tonight.
So this is obviously for the continued work in the South Plant and kind of defining some of that. So if you remember when all of this ARPA came out, we applied for a competitive ARPA grant on the reuse system, and specifically it was kind of looking at reuse for the south side or for the South Plant. We received a 5.6 million grant, and then that had a 20% match on top of that. So we were responsible for the 1.4 million. We get reimbursed the 5.6 million. We have since, the ARPA timeline started kind of in the middle of COVID. So we have used all of those funds that we've had. So if you remember, it was the construction of the pilot building, the operation of the pilot building, all those things up until now. There is still some funds that are left. I didn't get a chance to update the memo, but the total fee for the contract is, or this amendment is $766,000. Because of the reimbursement, we would only be responsible for $153,000. So the rest of that amount would be reimbursed. We have pulled some stuff from Hazen that can be done outside of the initial design. So the initial the design contract will be coming. This is a separate part of it. And in that is, characterizing some of the influent flow for the plant so we can start to design some of those processes. Looking at how we're going to get biosolids from the south plant to the north plant. That was always I say the north plant, Claude Yates. Claude Yates was always designed with the intent of handling all of the biosolids for the city. But we didn't necessarily get into how we were going to do that at the time. So that's what this is, kind of independent of the design of the facility. So that's what this is. I wanted to clarify that a little bit. So it's not a $766,000 amendment out of our pocket. And then this is because this project is capacity related, it all comes from the impact fees that we've collected. So is there any questions? Happy to answer.
Vice Mayor?
Just, could we have a update, maybe Eric, in the next month or so on the southeast plant? There's a lot of talk around our area about wastewater and sewer, and I'd like to I think it'd be good for us to have just a general update. Doesn't have to be, it could be just updating us on all that information, but also the public to hear that too. I think been very proud of how we've been following our integrated water resource plan, and we're not in some of those situations that others find themselves in, but I think it's good for us to be updated because a lot of people are talking about it, and it'd be good for
we can give you an overview of where we are, continue to make progress based on the guidance you all have provided over the last several years. But yeah, we'll give you an overview of where things are and what we'd anticipate in the next couple years as we move towards permitting, design, construction components.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other questions? Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. Michelle, I just wanted to say thanks for doing this. I know it can be tedious working through all of the grant paperwork and everything, but I think you're doing a
it's
great
all
job.
fun. Like, this is pure fun. This is every engineer's dream.
You actually touched on, when I was preparing for the meeting, it's the third to the last bullet point where it talks about looking at solids processing. And I was so impressed with the technology that we've been able to incorporate at Claude Yates at that location, and hoping that, and I know you've already got this on the mark, but kind of what Alderman Baggett's talking about, as we provide these updates, incorporating new technology that our cost savings as we're moving forward, I think are so important. And the work that you did previously with the solid waste and how we were able to take that, clean it, and then be able to utilize it in the future.
Yep.
I think that in that south plan is also going to be really important, and I'd like to see a comparison. And I know you're already working on this, of moving that solid waste to Claude Yates versus trying to do it right there at the south plant, and just maximizing as much of that space as we can as we prepare to do more construction over there.
Okay. I may not have the answer to that by the update we give, but we'll have that at some point.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Item 10, Resolution 2026, a resolution establishing policies and procedures relating to the consideration of petitions for the creation of real estate infrastructure development districts.
All right, Mayor Moore and Board, this is an item you've worked on several times over the last year, and we had a extensive work session just in December going over the policy. The policy has been updated to reflect those that last discussion and guidance at that meeting, and I'll touch on just a handful of tweaks that have happened with the policy document, and we await your guidance on how you want to move forward. But I'll touch on those. This policy is designed to support 4 primary policy goals that you have identified as a board, and that is to support extraordinary quality design that surpasses existing standards, the drive for more attainable housing options, enhanced infrastructure, public service and public safety enhancements, and redevelopment. So there's sort of 4 pillars that you look at to possibly apply this new tool that has been adopted over the last year by the state of Tennessee. There are a couple things as you look through the specifics, and we attached both a red line version of this document and a clean version that you'd vote on potentially. A couple things we add in page 2, some specific language around the submittal of this request as part of the initial development plan. So the whole intent there is that this lines up with our existing development process, and the decision or initial decision related to that happens as you're making a decision around a development plan. It could also happen in accordance with a site plan that comes through that may not need your direct approval on a development plan. There is some just additional language around the clear connection between a municipal benefit as you've defined it. And then we do add some language in the administrative fee section that just gives us flexibility. Right now there's a 5% gap as it's envisioned today, but if that cap is removed in state law down the line, that you'd have the ability to collect all the costs associated with the administration of the program. And we do broaden our discussion around including fees related to this from our water management department, our engineering departments as well. So that's some cleanup language. So this really provides for all of that. There is one other just consideration as you can think about whether you want to provide final approval. There is a legislative cleanup that needs to happen. And we talked about it at our last meeting a little bit, but to administer this program, you need to be essentially designated as a host city. And we have that capability, but we work through and collect property taxes and associated assessments through the county trustee's office. And the county trustee has looked at the current language and is not entirely comfortable that it provides the authority they need to do that administration. I think there's engagement directly to clean that up and fix it in this upcoming legislative session. In fact, we had some meeting with legislators on Friday and understand that is underway. We've also heard from folks from NIOP that they are having conversations with the Trustees Association about how to get that language where it needs to be so that can be administered. So there will be a cleanup at some point. And it may be wise for you to wait for that to happen before you fully approve the policy, just because you never know what actions get rolled into that, and that you might have a policy that is developed under one set of rules and it might be slightly different and you might want to tweak it. So we could keep an eye on that. We could defer this, say, to the end of February, see where that's at. That's past the filing deadlines, and so we would have a better sense of when it might happen. I don't think it's going to be a challenge. It seems like it's a pretty straightforward fix, but you may want to let that happen before you finalize the policy. You could pretty much put it to bed tonight, and we could defer it until we know what the legislative fix is in full. The language in the resolution that we drafted is sort of aligned with having it fully in place in terms of our ability to implement this administratively, but it doesn't have a date certain, and so that could be a little bit messy in terms of just clarity. So that's just something for you to consider. At your request, we did put it on both agendas so you could move forward if you like, but that is kind of an open issue, and Shauna may want to speak to that as well, as just in terms of just how clean it is to implement a new policy when you're waiting for an element to be cleaned up, but at the state legislative level. So again, it's a pretty straightforward set of fairly minor tweaks based on the discussion we had back in December, and glad to answer any questions you have. And it's largely what you saw in December with just those minor adjustments.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes. Well, there's a bit more in this that I would like to see talked about again, because if you look at the things that we got at first, and they talked about some places in Tennessee that are already doing something like this, and it talks about the people who come in and have to purchase the property will be paying an extra fee every year. And we need to talk about things like that. And so I think there's a good bit more to look at again, and whenever we see what's coming from the, what's coming about in the next, what do they say month, I think we still need to look to see what effects that has, because it does mean that the people who actually purchase residences there will be paying, we were talking about the trustee having to get this money and everything, or be paying not just like a $50 fee or something like that, would be paying an extra fee. And I've even forgotten how long that would be. But I have a lot of concerns about the idea of this.
Alderman Brown.
I think we probably have nuanced the policy about as much as we probably can. I still probably have I think reading through it one more time, I think my two biggest questions, well, one's a sort of a question, one's maybe a future state idea. I'm still not sure how the process is necessarily going to work, meeting with staff, those discussions, what staff recommendation looks like versus what we're talking to when it comes in front of us, and how we're advancing sort of what it is that we'd like to see coming out of that. I'm not quite sure what that looks like, but I don't really know how we do that until we get an example in front of us, quite honestly. So I feel like at this point we've probably got the language that we need to have in place, and until we get an example that we can actually use, we're just got to wait and see probably on that and see how that sort of transpires. I will say one of the language pieces in there that I thought maybe a future state might be a really good thing to add. We say in there that we strongly recommend that they engage the community if they're going to seek this, but I think it might not actually be a bad idea at some point if we actually require some sort of a charrette if you're going to apply for an IDD. I think one of the things about Armistead that I've really appreciated is, as an ownership, they've left a lot of money on the table. They didn't go highest and best use. They really went with a community-driven process. And really, when you look at their submission for an IDD, which I've had a chance to see sort of a draft of, they meet a lot of the criteria we would ask for in advance because they went through a process with the community to kind of figure out what the community was looking for. And so it might be something that we might want to think about down the road, that if you're going to apply for an IDD, I'm not suggesting you have to do a 3-day charrette or whatever like that, but maybe there is some sort of an engagement at the early onset with the public that we put in as a step as a board to say we think it deserves a little bit more intensive community input before you go seek this policy prior to bringing it in front of the board. So just an idea of something I thought we might want to think about later on down the road. As we see an example come through, would that be beneficial? And maybe the Armistead example coming through and talking about that charrette and how it informed maybe will help us decide if we want to do that with others. Relative to timing, obviously if we can't, I think we should get set what we have ready to get set, but clearly if we can't actually put this through a process, then we can't put it through a process. It probably warrants being prudent to make sure that we can actually submit. So I know that there are people chomping at the bit, some present company included, and but if we can't send it anywhere, then we can't send it anywhere. So.
Alderman Caesar, and then I'll come back to you after that. Alderman Peters.
Two good points, Matt. I think the first one, Alderman Brown, about making sure that we do intentionally get public feedback during this process, I think is very, very important, and I would support more strong language around that piece. The second piece, I would not be comfortable moving forward if we don't have a defined receipt of fund mechanism. I think that would be very, very critical, and for us not to have to go back again and do this all doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then I guess just a point of clarification on IDD in general, it's a one-time funding mechanism. Yes?
Yes.
So the resources and the infrastructure that is installed has a lifespan, right? And help me and others who are watching at home or here in the room understand what happens when that life cycle of that infrastructure that's invested in via this funding mechanism needs to be replaced or upgraded. Or help me understand. I understand it could potentially be seen as just it becomes a part of our capital investments and it falls under our budget, but maybe just a little bit of narrative around that, because that's the piece that I don't want this board to make a decision today that 30 years from now we go, hey, mom and dad gave us that house, now we have to go fix it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's just some clarity there would be helpful.
Sure. So, and this is very similar to what happens with the way impact fees sometimes generate investment in infrastructure. And of course, infrastructure enhancements are one of your 4 potential categories that you might apply IDD to. But the way to think of it is you're adding the asset through the direct investment of the developer or the assessment, however you choose to do, however that happens. Sometimes it happens through the impact fee vehicle, someone gets an offset, or it happens in this case potentially through the issuance or the use of the IDD tool. So you're providing for the investment, the upfront investment, happening outside of the ratepayer or the taxpayer realm. So it's supported by the development. But from that point forward, it becomes part of our infrastructure network, the public infrastructure. So from that point forward, then it becomes ours, part of our inventory, if you will. And then that is when it becomes the responsibility of the broader community to provide for maintenance and the longer term upgrades or replacements that anything might have over the long haul. So the taxpayer or ratepayer in the utility world aren't paying for the upfront. That gets absorbed by development. But then it does become a piece of public infrastructure, and that's where we build in our rates or our maintenance schedules how to maintain it over the full life cycle. So it's a way that the ratepayers don't pay for it up front, but ultimately once it becomes public infrastructure, it becomes all of our responsibility after that.
And in other communities where they've done these, I don't know if the tail is long enough perhaps, but could you, is it a one-time, the IDD, is it a one-time shot, or is there a chance that perhaps you get to the end of the year 30 in that community, as Alderman Peterson has brought up, the concern around the cost, which I don't have as much of a concern, with all due respect, Alderman Peterson, because I think the fair market will take care of that. The developer will be forced to either put a product that will sell or the project won't move forward. But is there a chance, could you extend another IDD essentially if the infrastructure needs additional improvement?
I have not seen that for maintenance. If you're investing in new infrastructure, then it might be a new discussion around a new investment.
Okay.
So that could happen as a secondary, or actually just a separate additional. But I really haven't seen it in that world. And if you look at some of our structure, we have what we call rate-funded capital in the water and sewer world, and that is how we build that into rate structures over time, that ultimately it becomes part of what we maintain as the whole system. But it would be a longer-term consideration.
Appreciate the additional clarification, and also commend the board. I think we've done a really good job of kind of beating this up to a point that I think we're very, very close, and look forward to having a chance to make an opinion, share an opinion publicly this evening.
Alderman Peterson, you're right.
Well, still, I'm talking about, if you look back at some of these things that were given to us when we first started discussing this, about a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago now, but it was saying here, for example, that they would have to pay an extra fee for, it says, levy and collect an annual assessment on each residential property for a period of no more than 30 years. So this is in addition to the regular property tax that somebody would be paying. And they show this example in Knox County, where it's going on now. The property tax before they would have this extra assessment, like $1,457. In other words, not $1,500 less. The maximum annual assessment after this would be $2,500. So in other words, they're adding almost as much on this assessment as the regular taxpayers are paying. You know, this will be twice as much almost as to what the regular the regular property owners would be paying. And that could go for what? Are they saying 30 years? I mean, that just seems something that is a lot of money over 30 years. A lot of money over 30 years.
Vice Mayor.
I appreciate that, Alderman Peterson. I think I do, and I think we probably, I don't want to speak for everyone, I think we are aware of that. How this is different, and again, we don't need to go into, we've beat this up a lot, but this is good for the public to hear as well, that right now, when a development puts in roads or puts in any of these community benefits, it's going to the cost of the house. That $1,000 a year example you used over 30 years, $30,000. That house, without the IDD, would theoretically, if the free market works, as Alderman Caesar mentioned, it would be less without the IDD. The sale price. Now in Franklin, without this, those are all baked in, all those infrastructure costs are baked into the cost of the house. And then the person takes out a 30-year mortgage, or pays in cash, or a 15-year, or a 10-year. And those costs are then added to their monthly payment, in which they pay interest on, which incidentally typically is higher than the interest rate that you would pay through this type of facility. So in some regards, although I haven't seen it demonstrated on paper from, because we haven't seen one, but whereas you and I might take out a 5% loan on that $30,000 and put that into our mortgage, this might be able to get it a 4%. That, I'm going to say that as an example because I haven't seen that on paper because we haven't seen one of these come to us. The benefit is that we get to use this as a tool to get the community benefits that are outlined there. So it's not, if it's like calling, it would be like saying that the impact fees that we charge on new residential units now, it would be like being outraged that that every new homeowner that we have in Franklin, the outrage we have that your mortgage payment has gone up by the cost of the impact fees that we are charging for the developer. That has happened. That's economics. It's being bundled into your mortgage payment or into that payment of the total cost of the house. There's no money tree somewhere where all this stuff is paid for. So when you look at it like that, and that is what is happening now, those impact fees, infrastructure investments that we require are being put into the cost of houses. We talk about it all the time. We talk about it when we talk about impact fees. So it's important to know that when someone wants to case this as some sort of additional tax, that's not what it is. This is taking costs that are going to be baked into your house already and giving you probably a cheaper interest rate. And by the way, the builder or the lot, they can wipe it off. You don't have to do it. If I wanted to go take out a mortgage in one of these districts and I wanted to roll that $30,000 into my mortgage, I could do it. And guess what? The Karen Parrish wouldn't have to collect a thing from me because it'd be done. It's paid for. They're done. So this scaring of that some have done to make this into some sort of like additional, no, it's a different way to finance the infrastructure that we heard time and time again. Do it before the development comes. Make the development pay for it. Make sure we don't want the existing tax base paying for new growth and development. And it's funny how people's tones have changed, and now it's like, well, we don't even want the new development paying for the infrastructure. Well, who do we want to pay for the infrastructure? And that's where this falls apart. Finally, maintenance. I do think we have to think about, and this would be on a case-by-case basis, because that's my largest concern that Alderman Caesar brought up. Because this does mean that there will probably be more infrastructure built, which is, again, I think that's what people want, is more infrastructure. And so what about in the IDD agreement? Can we require contractually long-term maintenance agreements? Say, for instance, hypothetically, we approved a development with about 15 modifications of standards for various types of different stormwater and things that were creative, that did add character. I believe there's one recently that you could recall. and we are as a city concerned about long-term maintenance of some of those things, can we add that into that IDD agreement contractually? I've heard there's concerns about, for instance.
I have a comment that may assist in your understanding.
Well, sir, we're not open to the portion of where we're allowing public comment. Did you submit a card to speak shortly?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, you'll have your chance in a few minutes.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you think there's some of these things that we're asking for could have long-term maintenance that would we deal with that on a case-by-case basis? Do you think that legally there's a way for us to, in addition to, does this give us the framework to then have that discussion? I guess the question is there anything within this that would need to be modified to give us the opportunity to do that in the future?
I don't think there's anything in this that needs to be modified, and I do think it will open us up to have those conversations. You already have maintenance agreements for any project, and it usually lasts for a bit of time. So, and until it's fixed and we like it and we accept it. So those won't go away either way. And if there's new additional benefits or infrastructure, that's going to be added to your current existing maintenance agreement. And if we have to make it long-term, I mean, they're getting a benefit, and part of the agreement that we give them is that they're going to have to maintain it for a period of time. So, I mean, that's something that we can talk about. And I think it'll be very case specific as to what that infrastructure is.
Like if it's creative stormwater or sustainable stormwater, and we don't really know how 30 years from now that's going to like end up. I would think that if we're going to give this benefit of the IDD, then we would need to have some long-term, even in perpetuity, that those would need to be by that property, those property owners.
And sometimes that creative stormwater, if that's
or whatever it is.
But a lot of times the HOA takes it over.
Right.
So eventually it won't even be ours either way.
See, there's a differentiation. Once you accept public infrastructure, you are typically accepting the maintenance because you've inspected it, you've seen that it's worked, it's fulfilled the obligations that were set up to begin with, and then it shifts into the public realm.
Understood.
Now, there are sometimes features that are absorbed or handled by an HOA. Those don't typically get classified as public infrastructure. So there's a little bit of gray there in terms of how you define that. So that might be where you have some room to work with.
It'll be case by case, really. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we got to get these in front of us.
I have a number of speaker cards. Would it be fine to go ahead and hear from the public? I have Patrick Collins. If they'll line up, please. Patrick Collins, Janet Curtis, Cleve Grove, Rachel Blackhurst, and Janice Williams.
Okay.
2 minutes each, please. Who's first? Mr. Patrick Collins.
Thank you. Hope everybody's Happy New Year to all. I've been sitting here listening to this and how the fact that this is a giant cost-shifting scheme that benefits only developers. If you take a random sample of anybody in this room or in town and ask them if you want them to share the burden for all new developments, they're going to tell you no. You're deciding a tax here. You're going to impose a tax for long periods of time on property owners. So, whatever your vote's going to be, I've seen this down in Texas. I would urge you all to call any city counterpart that has a PUD or a MUD and ask them how it's worked for them and let them tell you. They regret it. And I think if you do this, the town's going to regret it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
I'm Clive Graw, county resident, retired traffic engineer. I'm going to make this brief and ask to reserve the rest of my time for the comments in the subsequent meeting, if that's possible. I would like to just ask 3 questions now that I hope you can answer before you vote on the IDDs. One of those is how many cities in our state and around the country have adopted IDDs? Like, what's the percentage? How popular is this? How many cities have defaulted or failed where the homeowners didn't pay their fees? Why do we need to adopt IDDs? Do we need to attract more developers or small developers with less fiscal backing at possibly more risk? And why now? With schools at or near capacity and traffic congestion at a saturation point, is now the time to offer perks for developers? What is the urgency? And lastly, I'd like to comment on Alderman Brown's suggestion about educating the public. I was a traffic engineer for 24 years and in planning, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around the IDDs, so I think that would be a valuable thing to do.
Good evening, I'm Janet Curtis, and I'm addressing my comments mostly to Alderman Baggett because I think what needs to be concerned here is it's not a matter that you can take this extra assessment and roll it into your mortgage. You can do that. But then what happens when you sell your house, you have to sell your house for more to recoup what you've already paid. And in Knoxville, is the only city in this state that has IDDs. Realtors have already said that houses have lost their values in IDDs because of the assessment fees. So it's not a matter of whether you can roll it into your mortgage or you're paying it separately. It's still an added fee that they're going to be paying. Yes, your impact fees are rolled into the price of your home, and that is an accepted cost, but you write that off on your taxes every year when you file taxes. You can't write off your assessment fees, okay? So that is an added fee. It's also priced people out of buying homes because of the extra fees. So it plays a big part in buying a home. And it's also been known by Keller Williams and Crylike that these documents get buried in your closing fees. And since you spend 3-4 hours in a closing fee and everybody's going, sign here, initial here, blah, blah, blah. Oh, don't worry about it. It's just an extra fee. Everybody's doing it. People are going to wind up not knowing about these documents and what it's going to cost them. So yes, I think we need to really make sure that everything is clear, that we've looked at everything, and that we look at Alderman Berger has said that we've compared to Texas and to Florida, and their policies are so different. Well, we're not all that different from Knoxville, and it's not all that successful there. Thank you.
Good evening, Janice Williams.
Put the microphone down just a little bit if you would, Ms. Williams.
The schools. My kids went to school FSSD in Centennial. And as somebody that worked for one, the schools with all of this are going to be impacted. They're going to be under siege. The growth doesn't pay for itself. The taxpayers do. The overcrowding harms the kids. There's studies that prove the larger classrooms, they get less attention, they get lower scores. And that's not good for anybody, especially the kids, the reduced participation. The elementary and middle schools, they add 1,000 kids per year. The elementary schools are already at 80% capacity. There's one that's 105% capacity. The answer is not what we want here with the IDDs, which is forced rezoning, open zoning, and over 40 schools. And then you have kids going in every direction and parents trying to get them in that direction if the buses don't go that way. It adds nothing for the schools. The assessments are $500 to $3,000 every year, and they go straight to development loans, and nothing goes to the classroom. The higher property tax, it's another situation that we have to talk about. The new school bonds, et cetera, future homes, future people that are coming in, families. There's no proportional funding, and the tax rate It's going to hike $5,000 a year for a $775,000 home. The annexation contributes to $93 million funding gap for the schools. So Franklin reaps the tax revenue and the growth, and the schools get overcrowded and rezoning. Thank you.
Hi there, Rachel Blackhurst with the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. I just wanted to jump up today and express our optimism over how this policy has taken shape. I want to thank BOMA for your continued investment in this policy, and really thank city staff and former city staff over here for just the amount of work that they've done on this. It's, this passed up at the state in May, and it's been a huge undertaking for them to take that state law and distill it into a local policy. So thank you so much, and we're excited to help this continue to move forward.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board before we move on?
I'll just make one comment, which is on timing. Understand we don't have a date certain, but keep in mind too, though, that any IDD we would approve that came to us anytime in the near future, it would be a couple of years before those would ever hit tax rolls. I mean, so Karen's not going to see any of this for at least 2 years on an ID that came through here. So I think getting our ducks in a row is prudent and good. I don't think we're going to be slamming something into the county here like tomorrow if we approved an IDD tomorrow. So just to be clear about the timing of things too.
And I think our suggestion would be to maybe do a deferral to the end of February. Then we'll have a little better sense of where the legislative piece is. We may not have a date certain then either, but we'll have a better sense, and then can look at maybe something out from there. You never know when the legislative session's going to fully end, but it'll be sometime in the spring. So that'll give us time to know exactly what it is and make sure the policy's in sync.
Well, and simultaneous with this, we'll have to do the interlocal.
Yes.
So you're gonna know, we're gonna have some time, because we'll have to get the interlocal in place before this will work for us.
Yep.
And that's just so the trustee can get compensated for doing the work that they're going to do on our behalf.
Right.
Ready to move on? Item. Alderman Berger, you're recognized.
Thank you. So a lot of things said here tonight, I think, that are misconstrued and also don't know where you get it. Pulled out of the sky somewhere maybe, but or somebody's doing some research and it's very limited, but I did talk to somebody in Knoxville, and actually they're the head of the real estate market there, top person. No, housing and developments so far that we have experienced in Knoxville have not lost value. What you're talking about are tools that provide necessary infrastructure, which generally increases and maintains the value there. Knoxville and the broader East Tennessee markets have been having significant price growth in the last couple of years due to high demand and limited supplies, which we all have around our area too, limited supplies. While the market is currently normalizing and the price growth is slowing, you'll find the general market trends do not indicate a loss in value due to those infrastructure development districts. I'm going to believe somebody who's in that market, who's actually leading that market. The other thing is, talk about, somebody got up here and made a comment about schools that were over capacity. We're not over capacity. Our schools, all right, then you call Mr. Golden, because the numbers I just got from them, yeah, I have numbers too, and Mr. Golden, I don't think is going to lie to me. And we have over 55,000 seats in our community. I think 54, 55. We have 44 some thousand students in those seats. Subtract 44 from your 54, it's about 43, I believe it is. We have about 11,000 I think he said about 11,000. I wrote it down at home, didn't bring it with me tonight because I didn't think it was going to be brought up. But 11,200 empty seats in our schools right now. And our elementary schools, Janet, you can sit there and shake your head all night, but facts are facts.
Just speak to the
Yes,
board,
facts
please.
are facts, and to the board. Facts are facts. We have to do this research, and we have to make our decisions on facts. People can get up here and they can throw out anything they want. We can throw out stuff too, but we better darn well have our facts. And we've got mayoral candidates for our county who've all been talking about the empty seats in our schools. We've got people in our school systems talking about the empty seats. Unfortunately, our housing prices are so high here that people with elementary school children and people with young children cannot afford to move into our community right now. So our elementary schools are going to see empty seats, empty seats, empty seats. What will be more crowded probably will be our high schools, because people who can afford will have older children can move in here at that rate. But this whole thing is a tool that developers can choose. I think we have to remind ourselves this is a tool that a developer can come in and choose. We have this tool. And this is a tool that we, this board, can either choose to grant or not grant. Just because we're doing this does not hold our feet to the fire or tie our hands to approve it. We have the right to say no. It may not be right, we may not like it, we may not see that that is the right thing for that particular development, and we have to hear this out and we can make that decision. And Patrick, you're absolutely right. Alderman Baggett was talking about, you can't have it both ways. We've heard for years about making development and new residents pay for the growth, pay for the growth, pay for the growth. Here's a tool that helps pay for the growth of a new development, and yet then we have certain people coming and saying, well, this is awful. You're making these people pay an extra fee. Well, I know, Patrick. I'm shaking my head too. I'm like, do it this way. Don't do it this way. Do it this way. It makes no sense. So here we are working on a tool to help infrastructure, help development happen when we are low on houses, and a better tool for infrastructure, land for maybe our schools, land for a fire station. And I love your idea about requiring the charrettes. Absolutely. I think before they get approved and come in here, brilliant idea, Matt. I think that should be a requirement, should be written in here. And then, just like the city's responsibility, the cost of the future maintenance of this community with an IDD is no different than any other development. Because we have to maintain infrastructure and upgrade these things in the future, because we inherit that for all developments, no matter what they do. And someone said something about it benefiting the developers. Well, it should help benefit the developers, or why would they even do it? But this will benefit our community, it should benefit our infrastructure, and our citizens at large. It may give us land for schools or fire stations, as we said before. So a lot of fallacies and a lot of things that need to be sorted out by this board. And I think, we're going to probably have to wait a little while. I think, Eric, you're right. Let's see what the legislature is going to do to clean it up a little bit. But I want to make my decision on facts. And if this was such a horrible thing, and it's been around since the 80s, why would it still be around? Why would it still be around? Why would it be a tool that somebody would develop or approve in Georgia, Florida, Texas, Tennessee? Why would we even do that? It was such a horrible thing that was not successful. So, a lot of things. Thank you.
Alderman Potts, we haven't heard from you tonight. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Just one time. You did call on me.
It seemed like we hadn't heard from you.
I've been taking copious notes over here. as I listen to community input or public input, and I listen to our board, one of the things that I'm hearing right now, and this is where I would challenge our staff, is as I'm looking at page 6, 3.8. This talks about community input. It kind of lends itself to what Alderman Brown was saying about having these required meetings in the future. But not only in required meetings, I think that there's an opportunity here for education and to make sure that people have accurate information. I hear feedback and input from the podium as well as from the desk that there's difference on facts. And so I think that there's a great opportunity here to have a master FAQ document of sorts, and it may have to evolve over time throughout the years as if this were to move forward. But when we have the community input piece, I think it's essential to say what it is versus what it's not, so that we can remove misinformation and disinformation that's out there. Because there are some, not just for this topic, but in general, who will go and hang their hat on one thing without going and verifying that information. And they stay with that for too long, and it's not an accurate statement. So somewhere built into this, and I don't have the magic bullet here for education, but I think that we've got to have that. That it's essential for something that's so new. And maybe it was amiss to what Alderman Berger was saying in Texas and Florida and some of those other places. If they did have some type of educational processes, it's something that should be baked in and built in to what we have here.
Ready to move on? Item 11, Resolution 2025-102, resolution adopting the reevaluation of the environmental review and regulations for HUD-funded proposals relating to disposition comprehensive renovation at 114 Natchez. Kathleen.
Good evening. This is simply a reevaluation of the ERR that you have already approved. Franklin Housing Authority was awarded some more funding, and the purpose of the ERR is to ensure the neighborhoods surrounding the development are not negatively affected. That's it.
That's it in a nutshell.
That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 12 is a discussion regarding the update of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and affirming the city's commitment to providing quality parks, greenways, recreational facilities, and programs for current and future generations. Ms.
Thank you,
Clayton.
Mayor. What's before you is really just a discussion that we have the opportunity to apply for several grants in 2026 as some of the new properties or the capital projects or from trails or greenways. And so one of the things that the state and even federal grants are requiring is a 5-year update to a master plan. Our master plan was approved by you all in 2018. And so therefore then we're just doing some text amendments to this master plan, but we do have an opportunity over the next month, if you could share with the city administrator or myself, we'll be taking this document to the Planning Commission for an approval process. But we've heard over the holidays from our constituents as they're sitting at home or traveling, and we've got several pages of wish list ideas. And sometimes the small things make an impact just as much as the large things. So if you'd like to make an update to the Parks Master Plan, if there's a certain area within your ward or from your constituents, please let us know. We'll add those as in the appendices and we'll make that update.
And obviously, you've added a lot of inventory since 2018. Some of it very much in the line of conserving open space in and around key corridors in the community. So we want to make sure we're incorporating that in what we have. And also, there's always changing needs and demands and what people see and want. And so Lisa and the Parks and Recreation team are looking at that as well. So this is just and this is largely being done by our staff. We're not bringing in a consultant team. We're able to gather input from you, from the community, and incorporate that and make sure we have a updated plan that fully reflects the parks system that we have today.
Vice Mayor, you wanted to make a comment?
You said this is going to be approved by the Planning Commission.
Yes.
Is that just like a recommendation to BOMA for approval?
Usually we take any of the master plans that we have through the Planning Commission, and so they take a look at that, and they approve this master plan, and then I'll bring it back here. It's usually you don't have to bring it back to this board, but I'm not saying that to him. And so I'll just share it with the rest of you. But it will be just a guiding document. Yes, that's kind of that normal process. Thank
Ready
you.
to keep moving on. Item 13 is discussion concerning Southern Land's request for funding associated with improvements to Boyd Mill Pike between Stonewater Boulevard and Championship Boulevard.
Just bear with me while I pull up an exhibit. If you want.
It'll take a second, Paul. If you want to get started, I can.
Okay. Once it opens up, you could just move to the exhibit. That would be helpful. So good evening. With me today is Ron Cryer and Matthew Shelton, or Shellcross with Southern Land. As you know, they do a great job and have been a great development partner with the West Haven Development. So we've been talking to them over the last few years about discussions concerning improvements to Boyd Mill Pike, specifically between Stonewater Boulevard and Championship Boulevard. And so the request that they have is for the city to make a contribution to improve this stretch of road. Before I get into the options that are available, just give you a quick background of the history associated with this. West Haven came forward with a concept plan in the early 2000s. At the time, this section of Boyd Mill Pike was considered to be a heritage road. That was way before my time, and it was to be protected is what the community wanted at that point in time. So essentially, staff put a condition of approval on it that the condition of, or the status of Boyd Mill was to be addressed by the applicant, whether that is to be abandoned long-term, whether to be upgrade, or to leave the road as is. That's been city staff's interpretation of that comment. Looking at some more of the history is the number of accidents that we've seen on that road have been very limited. In the last 5 years, it's been one that has had a police report associated with it, and it's not necessarily been recommended. I will tell you, it is a very rural, outdated road that does not meet any standards or safety standards, is where that's at today, although we're not seeing a huge accident count. So regardless of the history of it, Southern Land has brought forward a request for city staff to, or for the City Board of Mayor and Aldermen to make a contribution to the project. So we outlined three options. Option one is to determine that improvements are not needed, and it's the responsibility of the developer, and you could do nothing out there and not prioritize that project. Option two, I had a talk with Jerry Hatcher in the street department about when we need to mill and overlay that roadway, and there's a large culvert that's there today. And according to him and his street inspectors, that regardless of what happens in the next 2 years, we're going to be on the hook to mill and overlay that road, and the corrugated metal pipe would need to be replaced. So we looked at what that would cost us, and that's about $120,000. So ultimately, staff said in the next 2 years, we're going to need to spend $120,000 on that road. Option three is Southern Land's request is that we participate above and beyond just a simple mill and overlay, and that we upgrade that road to city standards and make it more of a safe road. And their request was for $400,000 to bring that to city standards. Now, I will say Southern Land did already do the design. You can kind of see it up here on the screen. So they have fronted a lot of the costs to do survey, design to get to this point. They're not asking for reimbursement on that. They're not asking for reimbursement on the utilities other than the stormwater infrastructure, but their request is for $400,000. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and the Southern Land team is here as well if you'd like to ask them any questions.
But the staff recommendation at this point is option two, which is to allocate the dollars we would spend otherwise to the broader improvement, potentially, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Alderman Barnhill.
Go over the third item on the agenda again, where we want Boyd Mill to be redone from 96 over to Mycatcher. I mean, 96 over to Downs.
Different stretch.
Correct. Different stretch of road, but there is a gap section there that is in the capital improvement plan to fund that section of roadway from essentially Franklin Green over to Downs Boulevard.
Yep.
But this is a different section. This is right in front of the golf course, as you can see here, between Stonewater and Championship Boulevard. Oh, sorry.
No, the other one.
Yes, speaking of Boyd Mill Avenue. Thank you.
Alderman Baggett.
This is in my ward, and I heard a lot knocking on those doors around there, and I believe we have some public comments. It is a safety concern, and I think even as we drove out to the Christmas gathering this year at the West Haven Clubhouse, if you look to your left or to your right, you would see significant drop off. And we've heard a lot about it. It is a safety concern. I think we're having to kind of come back and do this, but I don't know why this wasn't really taken care of in the original development plan. And I think we can't go back and recreate the history. But I think if this were coming through today, I think probably this would hopefully be addressed specifically, because now we're having to come back to this. Last thing is, I think they've paid about 9.3. I asked them for this, so I didn't just go research this. I did ask this from the Sutherland. But about 9.35 million in impact fees, and about 6.8 million of those, they're not sure where they. You know how we do them. They get distributed in the quadrant. So I think that this is a 400 didn't shock me. I think that's around 40. What's the total cost of the project?
1.2.
1.2 is less than half. It's about a third.
33%.
So anyway, I would be open to the option 3. Understand why the 120,000 is that's what we pay. But I'm going to tell you right now, if this wasn't a possibility that they might participate, I don't see us not improving that road to some higher standard than just replacing a culvert and repaving it. I mean, it's in bad shape, and I understand that's where we started, and I'm glad you started there, and I'm glad that I really am. You're doing exactly what we'd want you to do, but I do think, in all likelihood, if there was no Southern Land involvement, we would probably come and say, like, this would probably be a capital project, frankly, because it's over $1 million, and if it was all on us, and because we're not going to find me another road where we would leave those kind of ditches on either side in this high traffic of an area. But I would support the third option, but I'm interested to hear from everyone else.
Alderman Barnhill.
Yeah, I guess maybe misunderstood. My comments were, I don't want to leave Boyd Mill from Backhatcher or from 96 over to Downs. I don't want to leave that out. I want that to be on our minds when we think about doing some of this stuff right here. We've sat and talked about that particular section of road now. You've got some of the, I guess, senior citizen living or whatever it is over that's exiting on that road, or you've got some improvements there. And I'm not suggesting we don't do this or agree to this, but I want to make sure that that other doesn't just sit out there someplace in space waiting for us to do something. Because we've been listening to Franklin Green and some of those other residents there for quite some time. I know I have anyway. So let's do this. I'll support that's support number 3, I think, on that, just looking at it. But make sure that we've got this other someplace still in the background that we're looking at. I know it's on the capital improvements projects list somewhere along the way.
It's on the funded project list.
Yeah. Yep. But I want that also discussed at some point in time too.
We are moving that one forward.
Got it.
I do have a question. I think you don't have any accidents on it because you can't drive very fast on it. I mean, because it is very narrow and you're worried about knocking somebody else's mirror off. I'm kind of curious. I can't really tell. I'm not smart enough to tell what happens to that big deep ditch on the West Haven side, not the golf course side.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron Cryer, Southern Land Company. The ditch would remain as it is. I'm sure we would reshape it, but it is a blue line stream, technically. So it has to remain in its current alignment as far as we know. But the whole purpose of widening it would be to migrate away from it to the other side of it, if you will. We're
To the
going to
tennis
increase the
court
width.
side.
Yeah, we're going to increase the width of the road about 4 feet or so, just to give you more of a buffer, safe passage, create some shoulders that would allow better pedestrian movement through the area. Because that's the whole other item is right now there's a lot of cyclists, a lot of pedestrians. Not far from that intersection of Stonewater, there's a family playground that crosses over to a parking lot. So there's a plethora of good reasons to be proactive and eliminate some safety concerns there.
Is there a sidewalk associated with it, or is it just strictly road width?
We would seek to put sidewalk on the opposite side of that main ditch. There is a trail that exists on the other side, but we think you need that connectivity as well, because there are houses that will go there one day. So,
Alderman Blunt.
While you're still there.
Yes, ma'am.
It may be moot, and you may not have worked for Southern Land when this came up, but why in the world would y'all not fix this as a part of the development plan, the initial phase?
I think the fact that it was a heritage road, and,
Okay.
and at that time there was, I wasn't there, but from everything I've heard from the old guard is there was, resistance to touch it. I think over time we've seen an increase in development to even to the west, further out of West Haven, and just more and more people utilizing that corridor. And to me, the overarching issue is the amount of erosion that has occurred in that Blue Line stream. And it's created a deeper cavern and just more of a safety issue.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, in comment to what Randy just said, I think I think that the residents to the west in the county did not want that road improved based upon their thinking that if it was improved, there'd be more traffic coming through. So I think that's reason that improvement was not made whenever we approved the development there.
And if I may, there's also the matter of the stone walls that exist in several places. Fortunately, we don't have that anywhere near this stretch. So when we talked about the Heritage Road as a whole back in the day, and even us, we would propose we don't mess with those walls.
May I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Do you foresee having to extend road improvements back towards, because the golf course continues on down Boyd Mill? Do you foresee in the future that being something else you feel like you're going to have to address, or it's kind of out of your purview? I know when you get to the golf clubhouse, and you go over the hill, there's the crossover.
Right.
To me, that would be the only thing that would almost impede your property.
No, right now we don't see a need to do further widening down that road. So there may be some things that occur in time that may involve a curb cut or something like that. But I think we'll be okay with the road as it is.
Alderman, I'm going to go to Alderman Peterson. She's always mad at me because I don't recognize her first.
No, that's okay.
So Alderman Peterson,
No.
I'll go to Alderman Potts.
I just wondered if there have been any traffic counts on how much traffic exists right now,
I can answer that question because trying to get to the golf course, oftentimes I'm delayed, so.
Point, okay, thank you.
We do not have traffic counts on that road.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to circle back, and maybe Eric or Paul can help to address this. There was comment made of saying if we weren't doing it now, this would be a capital improvement project. And so my question is kind of circling around that. If we're going to option 3, for example, prioritize improvements and approve the requested $400,000 contribution from the city to support the project. If we do that, what's the timeline for that right now if we were to go ahead and vote and approve that?
So we would ultimately come back with a contract, which would take a few months between us and Southern Land. Then they're proposing to deliver it privately for us. We're simply making a contribution. So I don't know if you have a time frame you'd like to share.
Just from once that contract was in place between us and the city, I think we would spend no more than maybe 2 months at the outset to finalize design, get through permitting, we would start rather quickly. And I think it'd be no more than 6 months after that, we would complete the construction.
So you're thinking the turnaround on it, if this were to move forward on option 3, is less than 12 months then?
I'd call it around 12 months at a
12 to 18 months?
Yeah, let's say that.
Okay.
Just so we don't cut ourselves short.
Right. And if this were to be a capital improvement project, what would the timeline possibly be? This is more of a Paul question or Eric.
It's actually more of a board question. You don't have it funded. You'd have
That's
to
my next
identify
question.
$1 million funding source against your other, couple hundred projects that you're sorting out. So that's what you'd have to factor in.
So that's where I was kind of headed with this. We're stepping forward for $400,000 right now on something that wasn't on our radar and wasn't allocated for in 2026. I recognize that it is a safety concern. I might compare this similarly to when the state came to us and the state offered to put the delineators in place. They said, we'll allocate X amount of money for a safety improvement, and we chose to go above and beyond that. And I kind of see a similar approach here, but this is $400,000 that we didn't have allocated right now. So just put that out there for us all to think about.
Okay, we're ready to take a break and come back in about 12 minutes.
I like that. Next meeting, and you're going to tell us what option you want to choose. Because I didn't necessarily get a consensus unless you want to tell us now to write it towards 3 or 2 or whatever.
Let's do it now.
Do it now.
What's your, the question is, are you trending toward option 2 or option 3?
3.
3.
What's the question?
I need one more.
3 is 120 or.
I'll give him the 400.
Okay. We will write it for 3.
Fix the problem.
Thank you.